that means, right, this explains Ferguson, this explains LA 92, that happened here, right, this explains Black Lives Matter. This means that even if we as a people of color accept your terms of racism, right, and we say, that, okay, we good, but we always gonna find a way, because that's what we do, right? Make a way, find a way, right? And then what slams that community into crisis is when we accept your racist terms and then you renege. That sends the community into crisis, right? Such that if Mike Brown is walking on the sidewalk minding his own business and he comes up shot and killed, you've now thrown the community into crisis. Because you're not bothering him, you're just walking on the sidewalk, right? Same thing with Sandra Bland, right? In a car, minding the business, headed to work at Peer Review, I believe it was, right? Another HBCU, right? Yes, sir, how can I help you? You don't need my license, what's up? Why did you pull me over? Boom, next thing you know, she's out of the car, next thing you know, she's dead, right? This throws the community into crisis. So what crisis literally means is that when we accept your unfair conditions, and then you don't abide by your unfair conditions. Does that make sense? Right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at Nipsey Hussle's immediate community of Crenshaw, yes, of Crenshaw, and we're going to learn ourselves something, right? So here we go. We're going to first start off with the black population of LA, and this is all stuff that is happening now. I am not talking in a historical, this is happening now, and I just want to give you that warning because for some of you this may be very jarring, right? But in all things I try to keep it 100. So this animated slide here shows black Angelino migration from 2000 to 2017. What do you notice that's happening? Well, this is where it begins. Okay, so now it's starting.
Okay.
It's decreasing, right? Now the next question that we would have as sociologists is why? Why? Oh, that's part of it.
Red line.
Right, right? So why is this happening, right? So now when we get closer onto the Crenshaw district community, and this is how it's outlined with this city policy. This blue line represents where the Crenshaw community is, right? This is how we look up close, right? So that animation that we just saw, this is Crenshaw up close. So this is Crenshaw community in 2000, right? Black, we got some areas that's, becoming less black. But then we got 2010, and it looks like we have a little bit of increase, but there's a decrease that's happening right here, right? So there's something that happens between 2000 and 2010, but when we get to 2017, there's something that happened. Now, let me give you full disclosure. I can't even see the streets on this thing real good. But I'm somewhere in here. I live in the jungles, right? This was me speeding to get here today, right? So this is where we don't have the 2018 numbers yet, but just from living in this area, I would probably project that 2018 has gone down because we have had an influx of white folk, right? So this is the city outline of Crenshaw. This works to do a very specific purpose. Because here's another thing that I want to suggest. This is not how black folks see Crenshaw. I want to suggest this is how we see Crenshaw. We see Crenshaw as inclusive of Leimert Park, the Hyde Park area, and even View Park where they booze yourself. Right? This is how we see Crenshaw. This is important. Because what this does is this says we have our own way in which we form communities, in which way and how we understand our own selves. This is where the Marathon Clothing Store is, right? Which Nipsey advances is a part of Crenshaw, right? But according to the city in their maps, it's not part of Crenshaw. It is a part of Hyde Park. Which means that the city is allowed to control which services go where. Do you see how this plays into politics? Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm going to use this map going forward from the viewpoint of black folk of Crenshaw to talk about us, to get us forward. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, so let's move through. Socioeconomic status. What we looking like? What we looking like in Crenshaw? This is the Crenshaw, and again, these are the most recent numbers that we have. We don't have 2018 yet. We typically have to wait for data to turn around. You have to clean it, etc. This is the other side, right? This is the fun side of it. Y'all don't get to see this so much. Oh my gosh. Right? Going through these data Excel sheets and trying to get everything clear, right? But this is the Crenshaw district poverty level, right? So we have elevated to acute, and of course we got our Windsor, our View Park, Windsor Hills area, they green. Right? And there's really no poverty going on, but I want you to keep your eye on View Park because there's some interesting things that start happening here, right? So these are the overall poverty levels. This is affordable housing, like all through here, right? This is where how we look so far. Pretty self-explanatory. Let's zoom down to Nipsey's most incredible, most relevant area, right? Which is where the Marathon clothing store is. Once we zoom down on the immediate community, what we see is that poverty is particularly concentrated in and around the Marathon clothing store, right? That we're dealing with elevated and acute levels of poverty. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, how does poverty map into everyday life? This is housing burden. Does anybody know what housing burden means? Mm-hmm. Right?
Housing insecurity.
Huh?
Like housing insecurity.
Housing insecurity is part of it. That's one part of it, yes. And the second part of it is that you are spending more than 30% of your check on your rent and or mortgage. Y'all see what happened to View Park? Not in poverty, right, in terms of the money that you make, but in terms of what it's taken to maintain. Oh, look, they don't fell in with the rest of us. What this suggests is that no matter what class you have, you can't escape this thing called blackness. Right? Ask Oprah Winfrey when she went over there to that country and tried to buy that purse. And homegirl behind the counter told her, oh, ma'am, you can't afford this. Right? It's a whole, right, Oprah. It's a whole story about this, right? But notice how we look, right? And I want you all to understand that this is an effect of something. This is not how we are inherently. And this is going to make sense in a minute, right? So let's talk about superimposed state violence. This is one of my favorite quotes from him, right? That we are not the cause. We are the effect. What does he mean by this?
Like, it's not our fault, like, we're in a situation, or, like, we are the way they see us. Like, that's, like, it's not on us. It's just the fact that we see from them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
for the effect of their cause.
Based on the circumstances that we're given.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? That when we talk about poverty, when we talk about, like, police state violence in our neighborhoods, right? It ain't because, like, we jumping off and doing whatever. Right. Understand that we are adjusting to the circumstances that we have been put into. This part, right? Which was done by the FBI, which we now have data for, right? So it's no longer a conspiracy theory. These are things that we know, right? Because we have now reached a far enough time away from these things to where they now feel comfortable releasing this records, whatever that may mean, right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about gang injunctions, right? Which is a lot of where my research revolves around. And what happens is that what they do is they look at us and be like, okay, y'all hanging out in groups of 3 or 4, right? That constitutes a gang. Raise your hand if you have a tattoo in here. I have a tattoo as well. Congratulations, we're all in a gang. This is exactly how gang injunctions work, right? Police the area, and then they say, oh, they have these comments. We need to monitor them real close. And hence, we got gang injunctions. Now, in March of this year, it went up to a federal court. They did away with gang injunctions, but then LAPD, of course, rolled out something else. Because when you legally define what something is, you also legally define what something is not. So therefore, they now know how to legally do this, right? So I'm working on mapping to get the projects they have it out. But, so this is still relatively recent. Notice where one of the gang injunctions are. In View Park, of all places. Right? That's crazy. It's criminal to be black and rich, is what this is suggesting. right? And then we have all of our different areas, and then Marathon Clothing is right here, right? So this is under a gang injunction, right? Policing black folk, hyper policing black folk on the area, on the regular. One of the requirements of gang injunctions is that these areas have to be policed 24/7. So even in the event of, and this is one of the things that I want you all to take out of this, right? Even if someone has never called you a racial epithet, right? Racism is still happening in invisible and silent ways. This is one. Because in order for hyper surveillance to take place here, that means that surveillance is not taking place in Westwood. It's not taking place in Brentwood. If you have moved all of your resources to one side of town, that means the other side of town, right? America works on a binary system, right? When you have a credit, that means somewhere you have a debit, right? It's just like your bank account, right? You can't go to the mall and ball out and check, your Wells Fargo, and you're like, oh, I got more money. That's not how that works, right? It means something has come out in order to give to others. Does this make sense? Yes. Right? So now, what impact does gang injunctions have directly on the black community? Let's zoom in further to the Marathon Clothing and Media community. Here we go, right? This is going to be important. The impact that this has had are these lines right here? There are schools in these districts, right? How many of you have heard of the Los Angeles Schools Police Department? Yeah. Right? That's a different department than LAPD that are specialized just for schools. This area represents the most arrests in the city, in our high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, in areas where gang injunctions are occurring, right? If you look, there are police stations within 4 miles of one another. There's a lot of stuff happening on this map, right? This is just surveillance. We haven't added in nothing about money yet. We haven't. This is how people get hunted down, police, because they are actively hunting every day. Does this make sense? Right? And then, what else is important to add here is this. These are the Inglewood oil fields. Right? And what do oil fields give off? Emissions and pollution. Environmental racism. No one has called you a racial slur. But you're getting sick from oil fields. Right? Can't afford health insurance. You sure cannot, which that's going to become important in just a little bit. And you're being hyper surveilled, and your children are being arrested. This is what I mean by crisis. Y'all see what I'm saying now? Right? And we're not talking about history. We're talking about right now. Right now. Right? The oil fields isn't your only solution, or is it your only area of pollution, right? Somehow I got the P and the S confused. How many of you have heard of SoCal Metroplex? What is the SoCal Metroplex about? You're not allowed to answer.
Isn't that the new metro project? Like they're building all these.
Why is that important? What else did it do? Give it a shot.
I would say it kind of split.
That's fine. I'm about to show you. This is part of the SoCal Metroplex. The SoCal Metroplex also switched all traffic, air traffic, going from east coming into LA to runway west coming into LA. This switched all air traffic to come over black neighborhoods. When we looked further into the SoCal Metroplex, what we found out was that planes were flying lower than FAA standards. What's this put in our neighborhoods? More pollution. And these are all the runway tracks, by the way, right? That are going over black communities. Let's take a closer look and freeze the frame and go down to the Crenshaw community. All day and all night. But do you notice how it loops around a certain area? View Park. Which still it hints to the fact that black middle class folk got some kind of influence. because the routes swing around, right? And then they come down through the formal Crenshaw area. This is now. Right? And there was a recent news report about this, about people complaining about noise and da-da-da. But it wasn't really like us that were on the news that was complaining about noise. White folk were complaining about, okay, we rerouted the air traffic so that it can go over certain communities, but we still catch a residual noise, and we don't like that. So how can, this like you can
Turn the
Google
TV
it.
down.
So how can we still make this happen and not get residual noise? Racism. Ain't nobody called you out your name yet. Nobody has called you out your name yet. This is what it looks like. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Are y'all okay?
Yeah.
I know it might be kind of heavy. I know you're like, God, dog. But this is the reality, right? As James Baldwin would say, this is the evidence. And the question becomes, what are we going to do about it, right? And we'll get there in just a little bit. Resulting health disparities, right? What's happening as a result of all of these things? Here we go. This is what pollution looks like in the Crenshaw area as we speak. This is what it looks like. Right? Self-explanatory. This is important. Particle matter index. Does anybody know why this is important? The particle matter index being higher than 2.5.
Isn't it what is particle matter?
Just emissions.
What else?
Maybe because we inhale it, we breathe it, we eat it.
Yeah, these are the particles that are in the air that you inhale, that you digest every day, right? The particle matter index is a direct reflection of the amount of heart attacks you will experience in this area, strokes, asthma, and everything else. The whole area is elevated, right? And then we go further over here, right, toward USC, right? If you want to see gentrification in live, right? But notice it's very acute, right?
Do you have
Yes, sir.
a map of like the rest of LA for comparison?
I haven't prepared it for this one because I focus it on Nipsey and for the Crenshaw area, but it's really not hard for me to do. All I have to do is hit zoom out and it'll show you the entire city. But I do have one map that shows the entire city for like a very specific purpose for this presentation.
Oh.
But I can do that for you. I thought I saw another hand before I reported it out. Okay, so what does this look like? This is how we look with asthma. This is the reality. When we talk about black and brown life being under
Attack.
yeah, this is it. This is it. This is literally the reality. It is one thing, and we should, it's one thing to fight cops killing folks, and that's an issue. But how do you fight particle matters in the air? Right? And one of the things that people got on Black Lives Matter for was, why are y'all blocking these highways? This is why. 10 runs right in this area. And all of that stuff comes over here. Right? And one of the reasons that they were also blocking the highway is that when they built Santa Monica Highway here in LA, that disrupted the black community. Right? And so a lot of the highways that you'll find some of the BLM activists on and other activists, etc., reason why they choose those specific highways is because those highways were erected by way of the Federal Highways Act that drove highways through black communities. And they protest on those same highways. It's for a very specific purpose. Right? That, and of course, to get news people out as well. Right? Hold up traffic. But those highways are picked on purpose. Right? So, let's get to it. The word that all of us know. Gentrification and displacement. And this is why this becomes important, why looking at Crenshaw's specific way becomes important. Let's talk about Eric Garcetti, our favorite person. Now, according to the city of LA, this is what gentrification looks like in Crenshaw. It is mostly green and yellow. None, minimum, even reverse, whatever reverse gentrification means, and low change. It's not happening. The reason why is because you have to look at the methods of what they're doing. This is why I'm a huge advocate for making sure that you pay attention to what you see and the evidence that they use, right? So the evidence that the city uses is they use existing racial composition, how much the rate of change of money that people are making in the area, right? Did I say racial composition?
Yeah.
Right, so there's racial composition, and there's another factor that goes into it. And if that has not changed, then according to city definition, you are not experiencing gentrification. So according to the city of Los Angeles, Crenshaw, I see you, brother, is not experiencing gentrification. Now you'll notice we got View Park, Inglewood, that are not even mentioned up here, and that's because View Park is unincorporated. Inglewood is its own city, so they don't have to submit their numbers. That's scary. Because if you in this room, you probably know what's going on in Inglewood. You also probably know what's going on in View Park right now.
I was gonna say, how was there low change? Like, for instance, my cousin, she lives in Inglewood. In her apartment, she had a 2-bedroom apartment. It was her 2 kids, and her rent was like $13. She just showed me a note from her landlord that literally her rent is $2,300 now, and she's gonna have to move somewhere else because she can't afford it.
Absolutely.
And that's because of the stadium. She lives right off Perry and Central.
I agree with what you are saying. This is how the city, but the reason why is because this is how the city defines it. What we do as sociologists is we flip the script. And we say, what are the indicators that lead to gentrification? Not what is the situation now, right? We need to know what are the indicators. The indicators are, is there transportation construction in the area, right? Do we see a creeping in happening of construction of buildings, right? That's going on, such that it's happening in the Baldwin Crenshaw Hills Mall. There's some things that's happening around there, right? What I mapped out on here is the Crenshaw LAX Metro Expo construction, which allows more people to come into the area, right? When we flip the script, as you can see, we now turn red. Still don't have the information for Inglewood and View Park. It's unincorporated owned city. They have to submit that information. That's something that you will literally have to sue the city or the representative of these areas to get, because they're not going to openly disclose these numbers, right? Was it, who asked me about the citywide? Was it you or you? The like citywide picture.
Oh,
you. This is why this is important, right? When we zoom out, here's what we understand about literally gentrification happening. First of all, there's a whole thing going on in East LA right now, right? But the gray areas, these are places that literally have too much money to be gentrified. It is impossible for them to be gentrified. So looking at this map, what we understand by looking citywide, you see like where Crenshaw is situated down in here, is that it's not sprinkled throughout, right? It's in very specific areas. You got a cluster up here, and a cluster right here, and it comes down here, right? This is where black and brown folk live. So if you displace them out of these areas, which it ain't no if at this point in time, it's literally, that's what's happening, right? Where do these folks go?
Victorville, Vegas.
Meaning out of where?
Nowhere, out of LA.
Out of Los Angeles.
To the desert.
Meaning that one of the projects of the larger, and this is why he was pointing to institutional, right? Environmental, all this stuff comes with it. One of the larger unsaid projects is to racially cleanse the city. That's what's happening right now. You are not going to get kicked out of Crenshaw and move over here to Westwood and think your rent's still going to be $1,300. That's not going to happen. The reality of the fact is, this is East LA, right? That's that lovely area. You think all these people can relocate right here? No. They can't afford it already. That means they have to move where? Out here, to another state. Right? And then there are problems. So I have a friend who's a realtor in Tennessee area in Memphis. He's talking about how a lot of people from California are relocating right back to the east. But then what that is doing in turn is driving up home values in the east. So much to the point that when you get there now, you still priced out.
Exactly.
That suggests a type of disposability. Where you gonna go? And then recently, yesterday, Eric Garcetti says, well, I can envision LA without Skid Row. Where they gonna go?
Right.
I'm trying to roll up in a van and shoot them all.
Go ahead.
I live in the valley, and
Mhm.
if I go like towards Burbank on 5 freeway, I'm starting to see homeless people like literally they have a tent, they have like a little portable grill, and these people don't look like they're on drugs or like that.
It's me and you.
Yeah, and they just have a tent and they're just there. Right?
Yes. It is the real project of what's happening in LA. We have just reached over 60,000 folks that are homeless. It is still skyrocketing. What do you do with that? I'm gonna get through this real quick. Write down your question so you don't feel. Right, I'm writing to it at the end. So write it down, and then we can just go from there. Right. So then the question becomes, what are the solutions? And the state has offered some solutions. This is when Donald Trump visits LA. Right? He's always here. So he passed something, him and the Republican crew, and I'll just give you a preview now. Democrats ain't your friend either. You'll see why in just a little bit. He passed something called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. These created opportunity zones. This is what Nipsey Hussle was trying to take advantage of. Everywhere you see green around the Crenshaw area, Nipsey Hussle was literally trying to scoop up property and retain it for us.
That's right.
Right? And he was doing that to counteract what Donald Trump was doing in this particular area. I can tell you because I was literally sitting at the table. Right? And what these areas are for, what these opportunity zones are for, is that for people who want to establish businesses in this area, Donald Trump would give them money to establish a business, right? And they get all these tax cuts, you give people jobs, etc., and this is supposed to boost the area. Well, the problem is that when you do all of this new construction, what does that do to the values in the area? They go up. And if you have a consistent income and your job's not paying you more money, and you have property tax, you live in View Park, what happens to those property taxes every year you gotta pay? They go up. Right? Y'all see what the problem is? And so if you go, even if you go along this, the Crenshaw area here, where they're putting in the metro line, you notice a lot of businesses are like closed down, etc. They're in the opportunity zone. It's coming.
Is that like along Western? Because I've been seeing a lot of new businesses.
Well, yeah, Western is somewhere in here, I believe. But this, I mean, like, it's all over the place. And it's not like the effects of opportunity zones stay in opportunity zones. They reverberate out. One of the problems that View Park is not an opportunity zone. But one of the problems that they're having is white folks are swooping in here and getting these black homes. Yes! I opened up my window. And I knew it was over because homegirl was getting it down the street with her baby stroller. And I was like, with the dog, that is the official sign. We have our own official signs as among one another of what we know a change is coming. And when you are a white woman jogging in a sports bra with your baby stroller and your dogs, that means that you feel not even in Viewpoint, in the jungles. That's where I live. You understand what I'm saying? When you that says, okay, I feel comfortable enough to roll through here and be fine. Right? That is the effect of opportunity zones. Right? Let's talk about Kamala Harris. Right? So we all say, oh man, some policies on locking people up and and these different, and those are valid arguments. And I agree, first of all. Right? But her latest proposal has been to give these historically redlined areas $100 billion. And this is what's going to cure this imbalance in income and wealth. And I'm not even mad at Kamala for this, I'm mad at her team. Because when you have a team, your team is supposed to be really, really effective in making sure you look good. LeBron is amazing, but he's only as good as his team is. He can't play a whole game. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Right. So let's talk about Kamala, and then I'm done, and then we can open it up for questions, etc., and run through these maps back and forth. So Kamala Harris's suggestion is, let's look at historically redlined areas, right? And these are the historically redlined areas according to the 1930s, 40s maps that was rolled out of LA. Y'all know about redlining? Yes, right, when the government was doing this thing. So where you see green and blue is where the government would give you a loan, where you see red and orange, the government would not give you a loan. Kamala Harris says that if you live in the red and orange areas, she's going to break you off some money. If you live in green and blue areas, then you're not really like getting anything, right? Because you were advantaged, right? The problem is like where we are, y'all have to follow me analytically here. So where you see these areas here, these are the opportunity zones. This is Trump laid onto Kamala Harris. And what I'm going to attempt to show you is how her plan further entrenches Donald Trump's opportunity zones in black communities. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, at the time of redlining, Baldwin Hills, most of View Park, a portion of Levert Park, Ladera Heights, etc., was not even built up during redlining. No one lived there. Black people lived here. Do they qualify for Kamala Harris's plan? No. Right? You got a whole chunk of black people that are not eligible for this economic boost. And what it assumes is that if you do live in these areas, that you're not impacted by structural and systemic racism. I just showed you that black folk in these areas are. Right? So now let's look at these green and blue areas, because black folks now live here, right? There's still black folks over here. Black folks now live here. Right? Those areas got loans. Do the black people in those areas, will they receive loans under Kamala Harris's plan? No. Y'all see where this is going? Right? And now let's talk about the red and orange areas. What's happening to these people down here? Yes! And they're moving out to where? Out of LA. Will they be able to take advantage of her plan?
No.
She's not for that.
Who's going to be able to take advantage of these plans?
Then it was exactly the moving in.
That's right now. This is basic analysis. This is why I'm mad at her team. This is basic analysis. There's no way you can take a 1930s, 1940s map and say, we're going to do a spatial economic realignment. What her team should have said is, we're going to use disparate impact framing to determine who was impacted, and then we'll roll it out, right? But now as it stands, you got $100 billion, right? And this is across the U.S., not just here, but I'm just showing you our area. This is where we're at, right? This is where Nipsey's at. You got $100 billion flow into this area where white folks that are doing this gentrification project to take advantage of. You have a transportation project that's coming in, and you have Donald Trump's opportunity zones concentrated in this area.
And we're being kicked out.
As you are being kicked out. No one has called you a racial epithet. This is why Nipsey was going as hard as he was going. This is why. This is also why I want to suggest y'all have to map me out, and maybe somehow we can reconvene afterwards. This is also why I want to suggest that Kamala Harris will win the nomination and probably win the election. Because once they figure out how this plan works, we're like, oh, we on board with that. I'm just putting it out there, right? So what are some parting words from Nipsey? And I hope this works. Let's keep our fingers crossed, and then after this, I'm done. So how can we start to get, please work, please.
Just want to send some words of encouragement. Y'all stay focused. Y'all keep working hard. Believe in yourself. Prove everybody that doubts y'all wrong. Show up every day. Stay pure. Keep your heart pure. Stay motivated. Stay inspired. Show love to your people. From Nip Hussle.
And that's the gospel of Nipsey Hussle. So, a large part was first find out the truth, deal with it, reckon with it, and then start working towards solutions. And that's what he meant by that. Stay inspired, stay up, all those things. All right, so I'm told I got 10 minutes, probably 9 minutes now. So what are questions that we have, etc.? I'm done. I'm literally done. Okay, so let's go here, now I go here. Yes.
So what do you think about the 92 riots?
And it doesn't have to be just about this. It can be about life in general, etc. I'm an open book. Go for it.
What do you think about the 92 riots and then closing down all the freeways that could potentially be an escape route for Black people trapped in that area of LA?
Yeah, so I think what that did was that provided like a model for now. Because we are literally trapped in. Right? So of course the immediate purpose of that was to prevent our resistance from spreading out into larger LA. But that also allowed them to see, well, okay, how can we trap them in? We got these highways, we have policies that we can do, and a lot of these things isn't just about killing you, it's about passing a law so you can get a gang injunction that will literally rope off your neighborhood. So that now when you go, you know, go through those areas, you're like, okay, we're familiar with that car, but you need to stay within this area, right? Yes, did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Go here, and it'll go here, and it'll go here. Yes.
So,
And now go back there. Go ahead.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So, thinking about like what Jay-Z said, for like an interview or concert, he said, the only way we could reverse gentrification is to do gentrification on our own.
Yes.
Coming from a person who like experienced gentrification with the Expo line, USC, and now this Crenshaw line.
Absolutely.
What do you think would be the solution to reverse white gentrification?
Yeah, and let me say about that verse real quickly. I agree with what Jay-Z said. I think a lot of people like took it out of context. What he was talking about, like this framing that Nipsey Hussle like was talking about, right? So the thing is, like, how can you in your everyday life reverse gentrification? The short answer to that is you're gonna face some challenges, right? Because we don't have like money like Nipsey had. I think what we can do is realize the value in love and cultural richness that we have in ourselves, right? Such that I'm pretty empty myself. But when we go somewhere, the community is not necessarily like us, like the physical houses, but it's us. And I think that if we find a way to come together and galvanize with one another and say, this is the issue. Now, how do we work together to keep, because on your own, you're strong, but with all of us in this room, we can get it popping, right? So how do we come together through our neighborhood councils, through everything else to say, that's not going down. We're not going to sell our grandmother's house, right? I have a student right now whose grandmother unfortunately passed away, and white guy offered him $1.3 million for his house. Right? That's on 54th and 54th and Sloss. I said, don't you sell your grandmother's house. Do not sell your grandmother's house. Even if you have to pull the equity out of it to pay the taxes, right? So those are some things. Making sure that you support Black businesses in your area, right? Instead of going to, I don't know,
Walmart.
I see, like Walmart or something like that. I see a particular restaurant in my Chipotle, right? Maybe you go to Simply Wholesome, right? It's little things like that, like redirecting the monies and then placing on them a burden to pour back into their communities, right? Simply Wholesome should have a scholarship fund, etc. If we're pouring into you, it should be residual, right? Because that's what white folks are doing. I saw, who was next in the line? It was you. Okay, now I'm going here, and here, and here. Y'all help me stay in line. Yes.
So I'm Larissa, I'm from Sacramento.
Hey, what's up?
A lot of stuff that you were describing is happening in Sacramento. A lot of people from
Absolutely.
the Bay Area has come to Sacramento, and our prices range. I mean, our prices go up every January. Whether rent, anything, they go up every January of every year, no matter what your pay or anything is.
Yes.
And I grew up in a lot of projects, and one of the projects downtown, which was called Los Rios, they completely emptied it out, and now they're building houses there. So everybody who was there, a lot of people, like a lot of parents aren't educated, so they quick like, okay, well I will take what you have, you know. So how would you educate people who aren't really aware of what's going on, what they're doing?
Yeah, I think we got to go back to the old time way, right? I think that, you know, technology and everything is good. Facebook posts, Twitter posts, those are excellent. I'm a Twitter head. I'm always on Twitter. I love Twitter. But we got to go back to, like, our ancestors did not leave us without methods. And so it's going to take us getting in the streets and saying, and putting in everyday language, hey, This is what's happening. What we gonna do about it? Like Marvin Gaye was completely right when he said, talk to me so we can see what's going on.
That's right.
Right? But we are like living like in this reality television era that's kind of sort of like taught us like, okay, it's you. Can you get your Benz? Can you get your Gucci? Can you get your Prada, etc.? Right? When in the 50s and 60s, and not saying they got everything right, but I do think they like taught us something in terms of get out in the streets and talk to people. Be like, hey, they kick you out of that. We know a brother that's an attorney. We know a sister that's an attorney. And then those attorneys got to be willing to do some pro bono work because you didn't get in that attorney's role by yourself. Right? So I think just getting in the streets and talking goes a long way for black folk. Right? We all know, hey, such and such down the street, don't take it, I ain't taking myself down there, right? That's just how we work, right? So, and I think that's just like in tapping on what it is that we have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like community collectivism. Yes, sir.
So my question is like, so I live on Exposition in Western, which is about 7 minutes from where Nipsey from.
Oh, yeah.
10 minutes from USC.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that like when they put the expo line there, because I lived there before I even got there.
Yes, sir.
They put, it's a lot of police.
Absolutely.
Right there, like more than what they need. And I noticed that like, it's always somebody getting arrested. Like I always see some
Absolutely.
young black dudes, maybe high school, early college years, getting arrested, pulled over, whatever. And my question is like, a lot of the students from USC, like they're moving more towards down that way too. So it's starting to become even more white in my area,
Absolutely.
which is hood as fuck before all this started happening. And my question is this another way to increase mass incarceration as well? Because it's like, I'm saying all these young black dudes getting arrested, but before all this expo line shit came, all of these USC students and the USC started coming more down this way, that it's just, I just see, it's every day I go home from work, I just see somebody outside getting arrested, somebody getting, you know, fucked with, excuse my language and stuff
No,
like that.
go for it.
And it's like, to me, it's like, y'all come into our neighborhoods and y'all trying to take over, and I feel like as black people, we need to start coming together more. In LA, black people do not stick together at all. And it's like, it sucks. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what do you, as for me, I try to talk to my little brother and his homeboys and let them know, like, all that gangbang shit is, you know, I don't discriminate. I didn't get into gangbang and it's not my role. But how do I talk to the younger dudes and to teach them that this is your brother, this not your enemy, instead of fuck the dude from the other neighborhood, he an enemy, but the police killing both of y'all. They see both of y'all together, y'all can be enemies. Even if y'all not walking together, they'll shoot both of y'all and get away from you. So how do I talk to these young dudes and to keep them level-headed?
I think by doing the same thing that Nipsey did, right? Like Nipsey talked to people like literally every day just by having a conversation with them and being like, yo, we not on that tip. Like there's a video like somewhere where Nipsey was literally like, look, whether you blood, whether you crib, we in this joint together, right? And if we talk about, I think, what is it, Chris, that stands for like community revolution and progress, right? And how these things like started off, right? Getting back to that place. And like Watts rebellion popped off by, you know, a dude getting arrested and like his brother got involved and the whole community swamped out, right? And one day it's gonna have to come to a point where when we see somebody getting arrested, all of us in the street.
Right.
Not even necessarily like violated, like in terms of like being shot, but just, oh, you about to arrest one of them, you're gonna have to take all of us.
That's how they
Right?
used to do it.
It's going to have to reach that type of point, and I would venture to say that is getting there, right? Because you cannot do this to people every day,
Right.
and people not like, you know, have a response. At the same point in time, like these intergroup relations that you're talking about in terms of us combating one another, I largely blame that on larger structural processes, because you cannot put people in a Hunger Games, y'all know what I mean when I say Hunger Games, y'all see what I mean, right? You cannot put people in a Hunger Games type setting and expect us not to pop off on one another. That's a direct reason. So that's what he meant by we're not the cause, we're the effect, right? So if you got Jordans on your feet and my child need food, you about to get got. And it ain't personal, this is survival, right? And what we have to do is come together and realize that community collectivism is greater than the individual, and if we take care of one another, then each one of us will be taken care of, right? But it starts with having those conversations. It starts with keeping it real, like in your hood, and looking out for one another. We got a lady in the jungles that goes up and down. We call her mother, right? And she's just an old woman. She every morning say, "Hey, baby," and, "Hey, mother, how you doing?" Right? And white folks coming out, "Hey," had to step out the door. "Hey, that's our community mother. Back up. That ain't the one. We will fight today, right?" So that matters. So I think just by having, like, I'm serious when I say conversations go a long way, and it's like it will click, and people be like, did you see Crenshaw, Slauson area for this Nipsey Memorial. That was real. I was like, yo, we could turn this joint up right now. And everybody would be like, we gotta go. We can't stay in this area no more. It's theirs. And that would have been amazing. And Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry to take up space, so we have like maybe enough time for like 2 more questions.
Okay, so we got 2. Okay, go ahead.
But so basically, my sister, she bought a home in East Oakland. It's the same kind of experience seeing somebody. And I think I've told some of you guys like the whole sports bra white lady pushing the stroller running in East Oakland. And basically what she did was bought a home in those same areas that are getting gentrified. She's an attorney, so she had a little bit of money. And so she's buying the homes in those places where we're getting displaced. So that kind of goes to Chantel's question. But also my question is, like you said, it's happening in Sacramento, it's happening in Oakland, it's happening in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So can you speak to, I know you said like the displacement, disposable in Los Angeles. Can you speak about like just in California as a whole? Is that kind of where it's going towards?
California as a state is in crisis, period, as it relates to black folk, black and brown folk. First of all, we have an immigration issue that's going on that's going on, right? Which black folk need to wake up to. Because in actual numbers, it is Latino and Hispanic people who are immigrated out the most. In terms of rate, it's black folk. This is dealing with your Haitian folk, your Jamaican folk, right? I'm West Indian, right? Hey. So this, so this hits close to home. This is not just it's them over there. No, it's all around. You got the immigration issue, right? You got gentrification that's going on. The entire state is in a push out. California is literally one of the most expensive states, if not the most expensive state next to Hawaii in the 50 United States. So this is happening all across California. It is a collective push out. It's not just LA. It is Oakland, right? It's all of these areas put together, like to give you like a state perspective, which says something about this area. Because one of the advice that like Ida B. Wells gave was tell my people to go west. Okay, we came out here, we established all this, and now like we're literally being culturally co-opted, and now that we done built all this up, y'all can't get out. And then you have the initiative by this like conservative white dude who's a politician who's trying to separate California from the United States and make it its own thing. Which I don't think that's going to happen because that's a lot. But still, just the idea of this is ours. Like there is a mindset here among white liberals that this is ours, and these are the liberals, right? I see. Am I skipping over something?
Yeah. Like 2 more.
Okay. Oh Lord. Okay. Okay. Let's make it rapid fire. So like just like get straight to your question, and I'll do 3, and then I'll answer it like right away. So 1, 2, 3, and then we'll go that way. Right. So what's your question?
If you had like unlimited money, or you were like a billionaire, what would be the first thing that you target, or what would you invest in to like help elevate the community? Like what do you think is the most important thing?
I move us out of America. Just being honest, Marcus Garvey thing. Like we have to have conversations with some leaders, you know, within the Caribbean. But I truly believe that this place is built to kill us.
Absolutely.
And that's just not.
And
That's
you mean all of America, like even the islands and all that, like.
Now Jamaica, we done took back from Great Britain. Haiti, we need to go over there and have talk with friends and let them know we ain't paying y'all no more money, right? And just let them do they. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
So I just would like to say that I agree. I'm ready to go back to segregation. I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to go to our own country. So yes, I'm tired. But the other point is that in order to combat the gentrification, what we really need to do is get our credit straight. That's the next like discrimination, the racism that they use. They'll be like, your credit ain't good. So rather watch how much loans you take out because your credit to your debt to your income ratio matters. You can buy a house for the same amount or cheaper than what you would pay for rent. So stop playing, keep your credit straight, and buy a house as soon as you graduate or even before you graduate. Get 2 roommates, charge them $1,000 a piece, boom, your mortgage is paid. Get a 15-year mortgage. That is what you all need to do, is get your financials straight. Stop spending your money on anything else but what you need to. live
Yep.
poorly so
Frugal.
that you can then have wealth,
Reality.
okay?
Well, I want to speak to that for a second, because
And then we'll come
black people are not able to get loans. I have my own house in Lamert Park, and believe me, people offer me $2 million for my house. I'm not selling my house.
Right.
But I go to the bank to get refinanced with equity in my house, and I can't get a loan. They tell me I don't make enough money. I rent an apartment, I have enough money. They tell me I don't have enough money. You can't get money. This is the problem. They don't want to lend black people money.
What about black-owned banks?
You try your best.
They gotta have enough capital.
I have great credit. My credit
They
right
got
now.
pretty-
Right,
You know, so.
right.
So I think the answer, right, is somewhere, because this is the reality, and then this is what we need to, but then there's the investment in black banks, right? So maybe we need to go to our own banks and open up an account.
And real quick, you need to take this and present it in court. National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education. This needs to be a all-day pre-conference.
I'm with it.
Yes.
We'll talk after. Yes. Okay, you the last one. I should have ended earlier. I'm sorry,
Okay,
y'all.
no, do you have time to stay, or you have another?
Oh no, I have time. I'm not teaching today.
So we have lunch if you wanna come and.
Okay.
They can
Yeah,
ask
we can like
us.
converse and do all that
Yeah.
good stuff.